Hey, this is Jackie Bruton, and for the past 17 years, I have been going into middle and high schools talking to students about the importance of making healthy decisions when it comes to love, sex, and relationships. And during that time, I've also received over 13,000 letters from high school students. And based on what I've heard in the classroom and read in the letters, I decided it was really important for me to record this video on the topic of, I don't know if we call it daddy issues and how daddy issues impact a teen girl's relationship choices, or just the importance of a father being in a child's life and what happens when that is not their reality. And if you're watching this and you're a teen girl and your dad is in your life, I hope you recognize how blessed you are. And I wish every teen girl had that relationship and that experience. And but that's just not every girl's reality. And so I want to speak to those girls that that's not their reality. So I want to cover three kind of topics in this video. One is, how does the absence of a father often play out in teen girl's relationship choices? And the second topic I want to talk about is just some of the reasons why dads may not be in their daughters' lives. And then the third thing I want to talk about is ways for girls to cope with their father's absence so that it doesn't impact their relationship choices negatively. And so the first thing I want to talk about is how does it play out when girls' fathers aren't there? And I think it can play out with girls in their relationships having trust issues, having low self-esteem, and looking for validation outside of themselves or in their relationships. And I'll tell you stories to go along with these, because I'm not coming to this conclusion on my own. These are actual things that have happened in the classroom that girls have told me about, or stories they've told me about. So one of the things that guys often say in class is, Miss Jackie, every girl I've had sex with had daddy issues. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they say either she didn't have a father in her life, or she didn't have a good relationship with her father, and she was expecting me to make up for what she didn't get from her father and to give her validation and acceptance. And out of the 13,000 letters that I've received, something that I read quite often is, Miss Jackie, the reason I had sex with him because he was the first guy who made me feel special. And you know what? In a healthy society, that would have been their father. But we don't live in a healthy society. So unfortunately, we now have many girls who run into the arms of guys expecting the guy to do something that is not even their job. And am I saying that every girl whose father's not there is going to end up having sex? Absolutely not. But I do know that it is a very common reason. Girls also end up with trust issues because they say, you know what, if my father didn't love me enough to stay, how can I trust that anybody else who, is in my life is going to stay and going to love me enough? They have low self-esteem, and they say, if I wasn't good enough for my father to stay, if I wasn't good enough for my father to like me enough, then I'm going to have to do something to make somebody else love me because I don't know what unconditional love looks like. And then you just have poor choices that are being made out of anger sometimes. And let me tell you a story. I was in a school with 8th grade girls. And in one of the classes, I had taught 4 classes that day. In the last class, I talked about what I just mentioned here about a girl's father would be the first one that made her feel special. And, by the end of the class, over half the girls were boohoo crying. I mean, sobbing. Out of 30 girls, at least 15 of them were crying. And so when the class was over, I asked the teacher, I said, what just happened? I said, I just said the same thing to all 4 classes. Why did this 4th class have such an emotional reaction when I talked about fathers? And she said, that's because those are our behavioral issues. And now I see why. Because of the pain and the anger, and it was showing up in their behavior. So when I got back to the school the next day, that day, I said to the girls when they're crying, I said, I don't know what the issue is. I'm not trying to, make excuses for your father not being there. I don't know your stories, but I do know that whatever the reason is, you need to forgive him. And I had a girl in the class who said, he doesn't deserve forgiveness. And I said, well, he might not deserve forgiveness, but you deserve to forgive him. I said, because let me tell you what unforgiveness is. Unforgiveness is like sitting in a jail cell doing time for somebody else's crime. And I said, I'm not asking you to forgive your father for him. I'm asking you to forgive him because you deserve peace. And so that's when the girl said he doesn't deserve forgiveness. So the next day, I get back to school and I said, y'all, we need to talk about what happened yesterday. I'm not trying to take you back to all these tears, but, we need to talk about how you deal with this pain of your father not being there. And I said, because if you don't deal with it in a healthy way, it's going to show up either in your behavior or through your health issues. And I said, I just think that writing letters is very therapeutic. And I said, I think you should go home and write your father a letter. And I said, even if you never give him the letter, just write him a letter and don't accuse him of anything. Don't just say, this is what I wish I had with you. This is what a relationship I would love to have. And because I don't have it, this is the pain that I am experiencing as a result of it. So the same young lady who said he doesn't deserve forgiveness, she said, I'm not writing my dad a letter. And so after the class was over, I asked her to stay behind and I said, you have a lot of anger. I said, what's your story? And so she went on to tell me her story. Her mom had 3 kids by 3 different guys. And she said, my brother's dads come over and pick them up every other weekend. And I have to sit there and say what's wrong with me because my father doesn't come and get me. And she said that when she was in the 4th grade, when she was 9 years old, she said she tried to kill herself. She swallowed a bottle of pills at 9 years old because she was so angry. She said when she was in the 5th grade, she said a guy in her class said something negative about her dad. And she said, it's like I blacked out. She said, I didn't even know I had it in me. But the next thing I know, they were picking him up off the floor with a black eye. And I said, and that's when you were in the 5th grade 3 years ago. And now you're in the 8th grade and you're still just as angry, if not more angry or angrier. I said, the next time you black out and you don't know what you have in you, will you have a knife or a gun in your hand? I said, we need to deal with this anger. And the thing that I think is so interesting about her situation is she feels rejected by her father, but yet when somebody says something negative about the man that she feels like rejected her, the love for him runs so deep that she gets upset and punches a boy who says something negative about the man that she's angry with because he rejected her. And so that's what happens often is if you don't get the anger out on the inside, it'll show up in your behavior, which is why I think writing letters can be so therapeutic. Now, I shared that video. This happened a few years ago, and I shared that video on Facebook and YouTube, and I got a lot of backlash from fathers because they thought I was blaming them, and I wasn't blaming anybody. I mean, I was just explaining what had happened in that class that day, and told how it hurt me. And so that brings me to the next topic about why fathers aren't there. And so there's some reasons why dads aren't there that I've heard from men and from students. One, I think some dads might not be there because they just don't feel like they have what it takes to be a good dad. And they think that whether it's, alcohol, substance abuse issues, drugs, or whatever, they just don't feel qualified to be a dad, and they don't feel like they have anything to offer. And sometimes they feel like that the child or the daughter would be better off without them. Sometimes, dads are there just because they haven't dealt with their own issues. Like hurt people hurt people. I had a young lady in one of my classes tell me that her dad shot her and her mom, and she actually still had the bullet in her spine because they couldn't get it out, and she's in constant pain. And so when I was asking her about, what was your dad's background like? Like what was his childhood like? She tells me that her father watched his biological father commit suicide when he was 12 years old. And he never got any counseling for it. So can you imagine this person who is dealing with his own pain, never got therapy, never got counseling from, what happened with his dad. Now he becomes a father. And he can't give anything that he doesn't have. He doesn't have the coping mechanisms necessary to parent because he never got healed from what happened to him. And then I'll tell you another reason that I hear I've heard it from students and I've heard it from dads, is sometimes dads aren't there because of, the mother doesn't want them to be a part of the child's life. And sometimes mothers, if the father's not financially able to pay child support, the mother says, if you can't pay the child support, if you're not going to give money, then you're not going to have access to spend any time with them. Now, I'm not here to place blame. I'm sure there are a lot of different scenarios in those situations where the mother feels justified in her decision. But I've also had kids come back to me who that was the situation, and they ended up, in the long run, being angry with the mom because the mom took that stance. But just understand that why your father has chosen not to be in part of your life, in many cases, is not because he doesn't love you. It is not because of you. It could be because of a relationship with your mom. It could be just because he hasn't dealt with his own, issues. And as I said to the girls in the class, I am not making excuses for any dad. I just know that we don't always know the full story. We don't always know the full story about why people choose to do what they choose to do. And I will tell you, just like I told the young ladies in the class, is I wish I could, make it possible for all fathers to be actively engaged in their daughters' lives and to understand how vital they are to their daughter's development, especially when it comes to relationships. But I can't do that. And I said, the only thing I can tell you is that when you make your choices, make sure that you make choices where you don't one day have a daughter sitting in a classroom in the 8th grade crying the same tears because of her father not being in her life, because of choices that you may be making when you're a teenager. Because one thing I left out of the story about the 8th grade girl is that her parents were teen parents. And when they were, sexually active, I'm sure that neither her mom or her dad knew that because of them having sex the night that the mom got pregnant, the ripple effect of what that choice was going to be, that now you have a girl who's 9 years old and trying to take her life because of a situation that obviously they weren't prepared to take care of the child. So let me tell you now how I think you can cope with your father not being there. And like I said, I do not have the answers. And so I think one way for you to cope is for you to get counseling, or for you to get, some kind of therapy. Talk to your mom about having you, go somewhere that they specialize in helping you deal with emotional issues and these kind of issues. So that's one issue, one way you can do it. The second thing is, I can tell you that if you will find a way in your heart to forgive and not carry the anger, that you will relieve a lot of pain from your life. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but you understand that it's not about you. It is about them. And I am a big proponent of writing letters, just like I told the 8th grade girls in the class. Write a letter even if it never gets delivered. And I would love for you to deliver it, because I think that, your dad, if he's not there, really needs to understand the impact of his choice of not being there. The next thing that I want you to understand is that you are worthy of a father's love, and don't ever take it personal and make it about you and there must be something wrong with you, because you are definitely worthy of a father's love. And even if you don't have your biological father's love, if you're a person of faith, like I am, I will just assure you that you have the Father's love, your Heavenly Father's love. And that love supersedes any other love that you could ever receive from anybody else. So I hope this helped. And I know sometimes, when I'm recording this, Father's Day is coming up on Sunday. And I know I get a lot of letters from girls who talk about the fact that Father's Day can be very painful for them. So I'm hoping that you can even find a way to share this video with your father. Email it to them. Email him a link to the video. Whatever you need to do, just so your father can understand that this could be very painful for you. And I sometimes feel like when I have this discussion in classes and one-on-one, that sometimes I feel like I open up wounds and I don't really have an answer. But I was told by a counselor one day at a school, when I had a lot of girls crying because I talked about daddy issues, and they stayed after in the gym, and they were all crying about and sharing their stories about their fathers not being there. And I told the counselor afterwards, I said, I feel like I just came in and I opened up all these wounds, and now I'm just going to leave after this assembly and leave them like to deal with these wounds that they might not have even thought about before I got here. And he said, you know what? Some tears are good tears. He said, because I know that some of those girls have been making poor choices, and they did not even realize why they were making their choices. They didn't realize that they were trying to fill a void of their father not being there through a relationship. And they thought that if I have sex with this person, this person, will love me more. This person will stay. And he said, so if nothing else, for those girls who are making poor relationship choices because of daddy issues, like so many guys say, at least they can think about why they're doing what they're doing. So again, I hope this was helpful, and check out more videos that I have on my page on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Until next time.